So we have 95 people on the session. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nikki Bush. I am the Johannesburg chapter president of the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, and it is an absolute privilege to have you spend the afternoon with us. I'd like to introduce everybody on the panel. We have Arthur Goldstuck, who is the deputy president of the Johannesburg chapter of the Professional Speakers Association. He's also the tech guru, and I'm sure many of you have heard Arthur in the media commentating on anything to do with technology and connectivity. So it's fantastic to have Arthur by my side today to help have the conversation and the discussion with our two very special guests. So we have Malcolm Hefner with us, and he's from Audio Note. And we also have Eric de Jager, and he's from Texonic, and he is the master franchise holder for Zoom. Now, I want to share a story with you because clearly we are the Professional Speakers Association and we thrive on stories. And how did today come about? I think it's important to position how we came to run this debunking Zoom session. Well, at the beginning of lockdown, COVID-19, of course, everybody, including speakers, were scurrying to find a way to take business online. And we belong to the Professional Speakers Association, and this is the power of an association, that we get to network with each other, to share best practice, and to share contacts. So, of course, we had a number of online mastermind sessions with each other, and our founder, Steph du Plessis, in one of the sessions actually shared with us that it was possible to actually subscribe to Zoom locally in South Africa. Now, most of us didn't know that. We were all looking at buying subscriptions through the US. Not only that, but it's possible to have local support as opposed to logging a ticket that takes 7 days to be answered at a bare minimum. Right now, it's way more than that, believe you me. And so we were introduced to this possibility of purchasing Zoom through a local reseller, and we were introduced to Malcolm Hefner, and he has been amazing in connecting us with Eric and helping people to set up customized, designed, integrated systems. And Malcolm looks at what is the right platform for you, whether you're a big business or a small business. Is it Microsoft Teams? Is it Zoom? What is it that you need, and what kind of hardware do you need? And then he works hand in hand with Eric as well. And then they work out the best solution for all of us. So that's really how we came to meet everybody on this panel. And we are just really privileged to have this hour with everybody present to answer some of the questions around which platform and why, and how to set up secure meetings. We're going to look at debunking some of the, obviously, the compromised meetings that have had so much airtime in the press, the Zoom meetings, the Zoom bombings. So we really look forward to asking Eric about those questions, how to set up secure meetings and efficient meetings. So I am going to kick off by asking a question of Malcolm, and maybe we should just check in with Eric. How are we doing, Eric, on the video story?
I've just spoken to Carmen. She's going to try a little back-end trick. She's busy with that. Let's see how far that gets.
You see the joys of technology. So Malcolm, I'm going to kick off here, and I'm going to say, I just absolutely love Zoom, and I spent the first 3 weeks of lockdown learning how to do Zoom really well. And then, of course, all my financial services clients kicked back and said, yes, but we can't use Zoom because of security issues. And I think in the last 6 weeks, I have actually used about 7 different webinar platforms, video conferencing platforms, which have obviously been set up by my clients, and I've had to learn really, really fast. And so I guess the question is, how do you deal with that question with clients when they come to you and say, which is the right platform for me? And of course, you know, and why would you, in certain instances, obviously recommend Zoom?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be part of this. There's a lot of familiar faces and names, so a lot of you have been subject to my torture for some time now.
We love you. We love you, Malcolm.
Cool. Thank goodness you don't have a look at me right now, because I'm possibly because the screen's cracking. But some of our customers come to us already with a committed license because they're part of an international company that has a committed license across the world, whether it's Teams, Zoom, BlueJeans, Google, whatever the case. But if it's a new person or company starting out, much like a lot of you have had to do, then we'll look at, first thing is ease of use. And when it comes to ease of use, obviously, Eric, close your ears, but I'm going to suggest Zoom because it is the easiest product to use. And that is the reason why it had such a springboard into the world stage in COVID. I think I don't want to steal any of Eric's thunder, but he'll let you know the figures at the end of last year versus what the figures are today. It speaks for itself that the market has chosen what the best product is. When it comes to a lot of security issues and customers like banking institutions are worried about how is this affecting us and what are the risks, a lot of this is has a hidden agenda, because all the security features have always existed, but as users we tend to bypass them and just dive in because we want the quickest route in. Generally, if you open up an invitation by me, you've probably got 1 minute to go with a cup of coffee in your hand and kind of stopped on the toilet rushing to the computer. So it's a last minute thing, and we kind of bypass the security measures, which we then blame the brand and say it's their fault, but actually it's our fault. And if we want to behave like some of our government bodies and actually publish the passwords and then wonder how people Zoom bomb, those are just silly mistakes that are easily avoided. So has this had a negative effect on our usage? Absolutely not. It's actually grown it. Is there a real threat in my mind? No, there isn't. It's a great mechanism for doing what you're used to doing. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for that. So Arthur, do you want to add something here at this stage?
Yes, Malcolm, it's great to be chatting with you again. To give a very quick line of background, I've toured Malcolm's audio warehouse and got a sense of the many brands that you represent, Malcolm. And one thing that struck me is that there are so many powerful brands that it tends to often come down to brand loyalty, why people choose one over the other, or the brand positioning. So I'd like to ask you, which is your favorite brand, which is your preferred brand to use in these kinds of environments? In other words, for webinars, for teleconferencing, and maybe you have different ones you prefer for different purposes.
Sure, Eric, I'm glad you've got noise cancellation headphones and hopefully you can't hear me. But the only permanent product that I have on my computer is Zoom. I was a Zoom user before COVID. I was a Zoom user during COVID, and I'll remain a Zoom user. I do supply Teams. I do supply BlueJeans. I do that based on need, client need. I'm the last person in the world to tell a customer that they can't have the brand that they want. But my preference would be with Zoom, and the reason is simplicity, ease of use. That's the basics.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Sure.
Right, Arthur, I wonder if you want to pick up with Eric, because I think you've probably been doing a fair bit of journalism around this, around some of the security issues that we've been facing. And yeah, I mean, I have a legal firm, a legal client, and I know that they are a client of Eric's, and they only use Zoom. They've just, I think, learned from the best place how to actually do it properly, how to set up meetings properly. But Arthur, over to you.
Sure, thank you, Nikki. Whenever there's a big technology-related disaster in the public sphere, we get inundated with requests for comment in various media, broadcast, TV, radio, online, print. And when we get requests across all of those media, we know this has really struck a chord. And one of those examples was when a parliamentary committee meeting was Zoom bombed. The obvious question was, is Zoom safe? Our answer, which might seem quite glib, is of course it's safe if you use it properly. And if you visit the settings and you understand the security settings, and you don't broadcast your password on Twitter, among others. So those are all pretty obvious and pretty standard once you look at it for even 10 seconds. But Eric, perhaps you can give us deeper insight into why those disasters happen and the extent also to which it has had an impact on Zoom's credibility in South Africa.
It's very, firstly, it's very unfortunate that it's happened. And we've had to obviously try and manage it to the best way possible. But again, I think something to maybe mention is that with Zoom, there are certain offerings that allows you to use the tool a little bit differently. Yes, you can have a normal meeting, and inside a meeting, you can have participants in there, and you stand the risk of somebody sharing something that would be deemed a little bit naughty or whatever the case is. But I think what's nice about Zoom is that they do have an offering separate from just a meeting, which is a webinar, which we are in now. And what I really like about a webinar, and that's my personal preference for something that is public, is, we have got 95 attendees, and they're all basically sitting in a space that allows us to get through the session. We build up momentum, and we're able then to address them and their questions on a separate matter, which is through the Q&A, for instance. And again, we can promote them up to this level to engage with us, but we also demote them after that session, which means, you know that you're not open to maybe potentially, being Zoom bombed, if you want to call it like that. In regards to the current damage that is done, yes, but I must be honest, some of those government institutions have allowed us to do some white glove service to actually hold their hand through the process and to show them through that process, because even through that, we've, they've given us a second chance, if I want to call it like that. And then sometimes, instead of, pushing them in front of the bus and say, you did this wrong, we kind of just help their hand and kind of train them through the process. And yes, I mean, the word pornography and racist slurs is very sexy words in the media, and people would love to jump on that very, very quickly. It is unfortunate. It's very, very unfortunate. But I think the numbers, again, does show that there's a bit of a preference towards Zoom. But yes, there's multiple platforms, obviously, on the market there.
Before I hand back to Nikki, Eric, can you share numbers with us? We've heard the international numbers. It grew from 20 million to 300 million in 2 months. Are there any equivalent numbers that you can share for South Africa?
Yeah, so what I would like to share, for instance, is maybe, what I would like to share is just 2 things which kind of stands out for me, and that is so the application, the download of the application. So Zoom, obviously Zoom's application on the mobile devices on the App Store have become #1. You can see it's being followed by Teams and House Party. Also House Party, very interesting application. It's a more of a commercial product, I would call it. But still, I mean, it's up there, and it is because of COVID-19 that it's actually won such a big popularity itself. But then if we look at the numbers itself, and again, this has been published by Bloomberg, so it's quite independent, but it shows, the numbers shows just the sheer volume of, just how the product itself have obviously exploded prior to, well, just after the pandemic itself. I think a lot of people were forced into a situation where they're at home. At work, they had a corporate solution that they used. They didn't always like it, but on a personal basis, they had a Zoom account. And the moment they started getting frustrated with maybe a specific tool, they said, well, let me use Zoom. And this is exactly what this has done. And it's just grown absolutely in multiple folds as well. And we can see with the numbers as well that they've grown exponentially over the competition, basically. And it's still growing, and it's still growing. This is our old numbers, actually.
Incredible. Over to you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you know, you've grown exponentially and there have been issues. And I noticed, being a regular daily Zoom user myself, Eric, that there is a new plugin that gets emailed every couple of days, if not daily at the moment. What does that mean when you get a new plugin that needs installing?
Yeah. So again, so getting a little bit back to the Zoom bombing. Zoom bombing, when that surfaced, there was a security setting on your taskbar that was added to it. Now, the settings itself, funny enough, has been there for 5 years, but it was on the back end. Zoom made this decision to bring that to the front end. So if we're in a call, immediately the host of the session can actually, you know, turn off that nobody can do share screening, share their screen. Nobody can rename themselves. So these were things that's always been there, but it took us 5 years and one pandemic for it to come to light. And for people to say, you know, let's just put it on the front end. So that was the first actual real update that happened. But then also what happened with that is Zoom actually took a complete different approach, whereby, you know, they comply to all the normal protocols, security protocols that was out there, and that which their competition complies with as well. But this is where it really gets interesting, because they were on the limelight. They decided, you know what, let's take this to the next level. You know, they started employing some of the best cryptologists that you can get in the US. They got the CISO, which is the security officer for Facebook, on their security team. And they really took it to the next level, where they're now actually writing a whole new fresh set of security codes, which they obviously would put out into the you know, the spaces of people that comment on security. And, you know, if it gets approved, it's just a, you know, a whole new set of securities that would be able, protocols that would be basically outside there. And at the same time, you know, they're just progressing from that as well. They're building from that. So, you know, they've taken a little bit of a hiding from a PR campaign. But basically, it has thrusted them way in advance with the competition, because security is at the top of the list for them. And they, in my opinion, they're at the front runners in improving the security aspect of it.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's been a frustrating thing, certainly for me, and I know many fellow speakers at the moment, because we know the responsiveness, the nimbleness, and the flexibility that Zoom has to offer. And we just get blocked because a corporation has got their preferred tool, obviously, and because they believe that that is the most secure option at this point. And then we get to, or we have to use these platforms where you can't necessarily do polls or breakout rooms. Two of the really useful features that are at our disposal with Zoom that are not necessarily, sometimes polls I can do on other people's platforms, but I can't do it as a presenter. I have to have it done for me by somebody in the back end. And so there's a lot more hoops to jump through, and there's a lot of clunkiness out there on some of the other platforms that I'm using. Some of them are really good, but I have yet to find one that's quite as responsive. So there are a couple of things that you've been teaching us on the back end, Eric, of how to set up a secure meeting. Can you run through a few of those things that one should implement when you're planning a meeting? Because it's all in how you set it up on the back end when you first set up your link and you put a placeholder in the diary that this is when the meeting is going to take place. What are some of those steps that we should be following to ensure a secure meeting?
So again, a lot of the new people that would actually download Zoom today, for instance, would actually find out that a lot of settings would actually happen by default. So the first thing that comes to mind is your waiting room. Now, waiting room was a feature that was there, but it was something you had to turn on the back end for it to work. now it's on by default. And as a corporation, you can basically lock that setting so that nobody can turn that off. So by default, everybody that's going to start a session, they would bounce into a waiting room. And what's nice about a waiting room is you as a host can send them a message. Guys, stay calm. You know, we're waiting for one more of our panelists. The guy from Zoom can't turn on his camera, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, you're able then to communicate with them and then start the session and bring them all across. We know in government, for instance, they've made some house rules where people would say, if you enter the waiting room, you've got to put in your right credentials. You've got to say your name and your surname. If you come in with something like, say, Galaxy Tab or iPhone 6 or whatever the case is, you would not be able to, you're not allowed from the waiting room into the session itself as well. So that's one thing I strongly recommend is the waiting room section of, and I also strongly recommend people not to turn it off. Then another basic one as well, I think now more for the users that's been using Zoom for a few years, update your software. I couldn't say it enough. A lot of people forget that. Zoom does push for you to update itself as well, but it's always good just to go in there and to update your software on a regular basis. For instance, a new release was done yesterday, which has got the security version 5.0 in it as well. So I strongly recommend people to update the software after this session. Also, setting up your meeting with a password is absolutely key, so that, you know, even if somebody were to know what a PMI, which is your personal meeting ID of Nikki Bush, is a certain number, I put it in, I'm going to hit a password, and then I'm even in the waiting room as well. So there's like a second layer of security, I would almost call it as well. And then also how you handle your session itself or your invite itself as well. I think, again, like I mentioned previously, if it's something public, you know, look at the webinar section of it. If it's something internal, the meeting is more than sufficient for that. There's also the registration feature, which is part of the webinar, but you can also do it for your meeting as well. Now, this is very, very powerful tool, especially for people out there that's doing public speaking as well. I feel that the registration part is a must for every single public event that happens, because you get a database of everybody that's registered. You can customize it. You can ask the guys, can I use your data to do something with afterwards? You get their consent because, you know, you've got a CSV that you've exported that shows, you know, they've given you consent of that. You can now go and say, all right, these were my people that attended and these are my absentees. So you can target that your message afterwards and say, sorry you couldn't attend the session, but here's the recording and here's the link to the next session. And imagine, you know, you're getting that momentum with them, knowing that there's always going to be a session. You're always grabbing that audience as well. Or target your marketing a little bit different. Say, thank you very much for attending. Here's a little goodie bag with some digital links to top 10 tricks with Zoom or top 10 security tricks for it or something like that. So again, I think COVID-19 has given us some real restrictions, but I think it's made us all have to think outside the box as well.
Eric, there are two questions in the Q&A that have appeared.
Yeah.
The one is somebody who's obviously looked at the questions that we posed in the registration, because we actually played with that. And the question is, why were we only asked if we use Zoom as the free version? What about those of us who use a paid for version? And then there's a second one, which is sort of linked. I see there are a number of customizations to this Zoom session. How do you do that? I have paid for a Zoom license, but not sure if I am able to customize at this tier.
So let's do the last one first. I think I presume by the customization, I presume the fact that it says Nikki Bush as an invite and the fact that it's personalized as well. That is a business feature of Zoom. What that allows you to do is to have the vanity for every single account. It is much more professional to be able to send out a link that is readable, not, you know, you've got to be a cryptologist yourself to decipher it, basically. It does make it easy as well. It does also put your brand out there at the same time. And first question, what was that again?
Oh, it was why were we only asked if we use use Zoom as a free version? What about those of us who paid for a version? Use a paid version. Yeah.
I think we kind of drew our own conclusions, so that's why we put the questions in like that. Look, I mean, the reason why we're saying if you're using the free version, it is an opportunity for us to, you know, somebody like Malcolm, you can work with Malcolm to you know, to sit and show what would be involved when there's a trial version, for instance, and the trial version would give you, you know, all the bells and whistles for you to try that out. We can even add webinars to that as well. We strongly people to use and abuse, basically, but at the same time, you know, it is obviously an opportunity. If you're a paying customer at the moment, we hope you're a happy paying customer, and nothing stops you from speaking to Malcolm as well. You know, it's you know, one goes, okay, what's the best tools to use? First thing that comes to my mind is you've got to have a good machine. You've got to have a good laptop, for instance. I'm using a laptop or a desktop, or you've got to have a good device. You can't have a hand-me-down grandma's tablet to try and run a proper session in itself as well. And yes, I mean, speak to Malcolm. He's got some interesting things, and he's had some weird challenges before, which he solved in his way, his audio geeky way.
Okay, well, Malcolm, can you share some of those challenges that have come your way? I know you deal with some really interesting questions.
Well, indeed, speakers as an example, your natural habitat is to stand in front of thousands of people and present and walk around and use your hands. And now you're stuck in front of a laptop and a camera and you can't show anything because you've got to like pick it up and say, can you see it? You know, it's a big issue. So the idea, there's so many tools available that allow you to get up and do what you used to do. So if you're a person that likes to walk around and use your hands, we'd put a self-tracking camera that would follow you with the microphone so that you can walk around and think as you walk. There's so many funny examples that we've worked with. I was thinking just now, by the way, you only really need a cell phone. I mean, I've had CEOs of major corporations phoning me from their car to say, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm late for a very important meeting. How do I do this? I go like open up the Zoom app, download it, and you're online. It's that easy. So it's a great tool for when you're traveling, when you're stuck in a hotel room under covert lockdown, whatever the case is. There's a way to use Zoom. I was thinking of an incident that Eric and I had some time ago with a free-to-air government Zoom meeting, which they had published. And I had recently done some work, and I knew they only had a 500 user license. And an hour before the event, they had already clocked 300 people in the waiting room. And I placed a call to Eric. I said, Eric, we're heading for a meltdown. And I don't know, Eric's smiling. You remember that day that I don't think he managed to save the meeting. There were so many oversubscriptions that I don't know if they could run that meeting. I don't remember. But we could see this hitting the wall like a fly hitting a windscreen at 120 kilometers an hour. It was just going to go wrong. But look, there's a solution for everything, and there's a solution for everyone. And the idea is to listen to your customer and listen to their needs and design a solution around servicing that need. And it can't go wrong. There we go.
There are a couple of questions on the Q&A that I'm going to...
Can I quickly take one of those? Because
yes.
It's actually one of my issues as well. And it also links into a further question. So Louise Mitchell says that her software is up to date, but her 2013 Mac doesn't seem to support a green screen or background. She has to use a real face in an untidy office as a background, whether she chooses to or not. Is that correct, or haven't I learned how to use it properly? Well, my personal experience is I use a MacBook Air. It's got one of the best webcams and audio facilities on the market in terms of what is built into the computer. Yet, Zoom won't allow me to use a virtual background because my hardware isn't up to it. Yet my camera and my audio equipment is way ahead of most of what I see other people using with their virtual backgrounds. That's the first part of the question, Eric. I'm going to make you work hard on this one. The second one is, when I look at your virtual background, I see something that is common to most virtual backgrounds. It creates havoc with your hairstyle. And I don't know if you've been to a hairdresser during lockdown, but Zoom's virtual backgrounds destroys any hairstyle that you might have spent a lot of money on. And that applies to most people except those who don't have any hair at all. So eventually I'll not have that issue either. But how do people deal with that? I understand that lighting is a big part of it. So perhaps we're also moving now into the hardware question.
Yeah, so just on the virtual backgrounds, it is, again, it's a feature in its infancy, and I'm sure it's going to evolve. It has evolved. It started first with just having, it started first with having just, you've got to have a physical solid color behind you to have that feature. So about a year ago when it came out, I had to have a green screen. I have to pick that color as my predominant color, and then it would give me a much smoother. But you see, if I'm moving my hand like this, you know, you're getting that frog hand effect kind of thing. So having a green screen as a solid color at the background is still, in my opinion, the best virtual background environment. This one that I'm using is just using the intelligence of the depth of the camera and then identifying me, and then laying in a virtual background at the back itself. Yes, it does destroy your nice Sunday perm or whatever the case is. But if you want to do this, and if you're a public speaker, you know, it's about upping your game. You're going to have to up your game. You're going to have to create a specific space that you make provision for it. You know, do some acoustical treatment in the environment. Myself, I'm standing. I'm actually not at my normal spot where I normally conduct my Zoom calls, but you know, have full the screen kind of thing. You know, get maybe a green screen itself. It's not an expensive item. You go to an online store, you buy it for less than R1,000, for instance, or just paint it. Get your husband or wife to just paint it behind you a solid color. Choose that as the color, and do it like that, and get creative. I mean, I've got some really funnies and creatives, you know, that you can do as well with video as well. For instance, you can have your fish tank at the back. I even do my Wayne's World as well sometimes. So one can get really, really creative with it as well. And yeah.
And the question of the hardware that's not up to the task, according to Zoom?
Yeah, so this one that I'm using, because of that depth indication, is way more processing that's happening on the machine itself. So you do need something like an i7 with a lot of RAM that has to process that itself as well. So yes, unfortunately, it is a hardware thing. But again, with everything, as I said in the beginning, it is evolving. Maybe as time goes on and the algorithms get shorter and shorter, maybe you would be able to get away with a machine that's that doesn't have so much beef to handle it in itself.
Maybe this is a related question, I'm not sure, but Kim Potgieter says, I have the Pro package. I'm struggling with Zoom when I play, it's now disappeared. I'm struggling with Zoom when I play videos. They're delayed voice to image for participants when I use my Mac computer, yet on my Dell laptop, it works well. Do Mac and Zoom have compatibility issues?
Can I jump in here, Eric?
Yeah, go for it.
When it comes to video, there's a couple other issues that we got to look at. So just because you have fiber connection doesn't mean that your upload speed is sufficient, or your upload is sufficient to take 4K video. We can look at cables that are old. We can look at routers that are only 10.100 and not 10.100 1,000. We can look at lots of reasons that can delay a video upload, stagger it, or prevent it from playing. It's not necessarily a Zoom issue. It's not necessarily your laptop's version problem, your Mac's version or anything. There's a whole lot of things in between. And those, when it happens, you need to ask for help, because you could spend your life trying to find the solution. Eric,
so that was my next question. You're saying ask for help. And one of the really big benefits, of course, of buying locally, that those of us who have bought locally have discovered, is that we get instant support. Can you tell us, Malcolm, about the local support structure and how our members can actually get help literally in 30 seconds, because it is that quick, and it has been amazing for somebody who's been learning something new to, you know, you fiddle and then you get stuck, and then what? And to be able to actually call on somebody who can help you work it out and even get on your screen with you has been just priceless.
Can you mute Eric for this process, please? So basically, a lot of us start our interaction with Zoom on a free account, as been brought up before. And how that works is you log into Zoom and get this freebie, and you're now locked into the US. But the US kind of looks like they've done their marketing and they now own you. Then you want to take out a license, you take out a license and you can't support. You get a ticket, you're number 250,000th in the queue, and you've got an 11-hour wait. Meeting's long gone. So what we do in that case is we ask you for an alternative email address, we take out a local license, and then we migrate you from the US into a local license agreement through Eric. What that gives you is the ability to open up your Zoom during working hours, if it's working hours, and type in zoom.support and hit enter. And suddenly you've got a team of guys that are going to hop in and they're going to help you through your problems. That's if it's Zoom related. If it's hardware related, you're going to phone me as a first line assistance with it, because Zoom handles software, I handle hardware. And if there's an interaction with both, then we'll assist you with that. But it's really difficult for us on a timeline in the Southern Hemisphere to be running around US time and waiting for tickets when they've only got 5 people on an all-night assistance for major problems, and you're wondering how to connect from home. So it's imperative. It's the same price, guys. It's a dollar-based price that is times by an exchange rate, and that's what you pay. So having the local support is absolutely invaluable, and I welcome it.
Eric, can I ask you about the business model? Firstly, Nomvula wants to know, can you convert from individual Zoom to business in order to customize, or must you register a new company one? And along with that, can you tell us a little about demo versions that are available to speakers, people who want to try it out before they actually go in with a paid version?
Yeah, so again, with when we structure a trial, you immediately get access to a large 500 and a webinar 500 as well. The webinar is nice to know that you've got that part of your trial. I know Nikki herself really enjoyed the webinar a lot as well. And as Malcolm said, it's unfortunate that, you know, rand dollar based things, when there's a dollar and you have to times it by the exchange, it does add up, obviously. But just on that point, I think I had a discussion yesterday with someone, and I explained it to them like this. I said to them, you know, Zoom's got a webinar feature of 100, 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. And the difference is, you know, if you're doing a conference of 100 people, you don't have all 100 people looking at you, straight at you. You know, you have half of them paying attention, the other quarter is still eating on the buffet, and the other quarter is answering their phones somewhere else, or whatever the case is. And I think what's nice about the webinar itself is that you're getting that interaction with them, you're getting that time of their eyes, and then again, scaling that up to a 300 to a 500. I mean, imagine 1,000 people as a public speaking, and they all focus on you, and then scaling that up as well. And again, it can go even larger than that as well. So I think one has got to look at it like that as well. Yes, and again, I forgot the first question.
That was the question about upgrading your basic account to a Zoom account, to a business account, or do you need to register a separate account under your company name?
Look, I prefer if they, I think it's best practice to do it as a company. And the best thing to do with a company is because then you dictate your company policies. And again, it touches on the security aspect of things. If I'm a big financial institution, I want to know that I've got all my staff inside there. I dictate the privacy and security settings down upon them all, and they have to accept it. You can lock it down to them. The moment you start getting somebody who's buying, with their Gmail, for instance, a license, privately, and then act as the business, there's no way for the business to dictate down what those settings would be upon them. And that in itself, I see as a risk in itself as well. So that's why Zoom's got other features like managed domains, for instance. What that allows you to do is to take that domain and funnel all those financial institution email into one single account and then manage them accordingly.
So we have got a question from Adele, and she says, what's the process to buy locally? My license is coming up for renewal and would love to change it to local. So Malcolm, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, my email in the chat, you can contact me and I'll give you all those ways of doing it. It's pretty easy, and we manage that. We assist you with that process. As first line, understandably, Zoom has a lot of queries all daily, and you'll have personal interest with me in assisting with that. It's not a problem at all.
Just to let other people know, because you guys helped me to switch from an American account to a local account, it took about 5 or 6 weeks to get the refund. So they have refunded, but it took a little while.
We can save you all of that in dealing locally.
And we'll handle it per case scenario as well. We'll make an informed decision to say, let's bleed out what you've got, and then then sign up something else as well. And again, I mean, it's still up to you. It's still up to the users here to decide where they want to buy. Nobody can put a gun to people and say they have to buy it like this or they have to buy it like that. If people have a preference to buy from the US, that's by all means they can do it. Again, it is great what Malcolm mentioned about the support to be able to offer. It was an idea that we had prior to COVID-19, is to have a Zoom support hotline, which is available for people to use, that is currently under our control. Which has received amazing response as well. But in Zoom's defense, they are also, they didn't foresee something. Nobody could have foreseen what has happened in our world. And therefore, they're also gearing up immensely as well from their support perspective as well. So I can see from the chat and the Q&A, there's a few guys who's quite frustrated with waiting for some answers. But yes, Zoom is obviously fixing that and gearing up to up those, to make that faster, basically.
Eric, I've got a fascinating question from Oscar.
Sure.
He said, I realize that settings on the iPhone are completely different from the ones you get on the laptop. Why so, and how can you get around that? And just to expand on that question, it's really on any smartphone. And I often find people are joining via their phones, but they don't have the same controls. Of course, the lens is different, the camera is different, so how you are framed is going to be different. But in terms of the actual controls?
Well, I think with a phone and a mobile device, you only got so much real estate. And, you know, on a machine like this, one can position your stuff more strategically and see all your controls. But yes, obviously on a mobile device, you're going to have some of the settings that's a little bit, not hidden, but it'll have like a second press to get to that as such. I find a very common mistake I do find is people sometimes join their own meeting as a participant, not as a host. And then they look at the laptop or the mobile device and they go, where's my settings? So that's a very common mistake. People don't sign in to start the session. So I always recommend people to, even for this session itself, I actually did a camera and microphone test prior to actually to joining the session itself, that I know, am I on the right microphone? Because I've got a microphone here, I've got a microphone here, I've got one on my camera at the front. So I want to make sure I've got the best one there. And you can test it. You can speak and hear it back to yourself. There's a thing called test computer audio. And that's an amazing feature to play with as well.
You might be wondering why Eric and I are wearing headphones. So a part of our microphones cut out the noise. So behind me, there's air cons and people talking and people shouting and traffic and all that sort of stuff. But you shouldn't be able to hear all of that. And also I can focus on the subject matter and the people that I'm talking to by having my ears covered, and I'm more drawn in, as I'm assuming Eric does as well. There's a lot of extra inexpensive things that you can add to assist you with having a proper business meeting, whatever the reason is, lecturing students or lecturing people, wherever you find yourself, there is a tool to assist you in doing this professionally.
Having said that, sorry. I'm just fascinated at the fact that I have had lots of tools sitting around being unused for years and years and years. And I now use them on a daily basis. So I've got my Countryman Madonna microphone on, which I know gives you a much better sound quality. So ordinarily, most of the time, we would go to somebody else's event and they'd give us one of these. I've had mine sitting in a box that I've barely used. And now I strap it on, you know, just about every day for a couple of hours if I'm doing webinars, for much, much better sound quality. My clicker that I would ordinarily use in a big room, I still use, so that I don't have to lean forward and press, you know, advance the slide and those sorts of things. I think lighting is a big, big issue. And I was fortunate to pick up a softbox light literally 2 hours before lockdown. And many people have really bad lighting. Malcolm, do you want to make a comment on that? Does it have to be an expensive issue? Mine wasn't expensive, by the way, 1,500 Rand, I think 1,200 Rand I paid for this, which for me, it paid for itself in the first week of lockdown. But what can people do?
When you're dealing with a camera, you've got to remember that it's like any photographic product. If I've got a light source behind me like what I have now, I'm going to pixelate my picture, because Arthur will go into more detail about how photographic equipment works, but it's exactly the same. So you need to play around with the location of where you're going to be having these meetings, and try and position yourself in a place where you're presenting the best possible picture, where other people can see you easily. Some of the colleagues like Paul have found up camping lights that would illuminate from the side so that you have even balance over your face. I mean, if I look at Arthur, he's worked at this. I can see that he has where I want to be one day. I mean, with all those books and knowledge behind you, but I can see him clearly out of everyone. I mean, and Nikki as well. I mean, I know you're sitting in a professional environment right now, and Arthur's sitting in his study, and what you can't see is all those toys that he gets to play with, which he's hiding. All
and you don't get to see that I have a light sitting behind me.
No.
Just some little tricks that are very useful. What I find very difficult, though, is for us who wear glasses, to not get that reflection is tough.
Yeah, look, you've got to play around with this, but always try and have the light source on you front, like you would be taking a photograph on the beach. The sun's got to be behind the camera, not facing the camera. It's really a simple thing, but you've got to trial and error. And if you need help, I'm always available. I think most of the people on here that have some experience are always available. We're here to help you. We understand what's going on at the moment. And just speaking of that, before I leave that topic, all of you derived income from speaking. And it's important that you know that you can continue to do that. And it's now just not locally anymore. You're on the world stage. And you can derive an income by offering subscriptions through PayPal, on Zoom, and now market yourself to the greater world. It's a great opportunity. And if you need any help with that, please shout. There's ways and means. And you've got so much more potential right now. You really need to see that.
And I quickly also comment, just to echo something that Malcolm just said there. I feel that in the day and age that we're living in, and I'm not just public speaking, I'm talking about just in this virtual space that we are, one have to have your physical strategy and a digital strategy. And this is your digital strategy going forward. And it's almost diversifying yourself as well. And it's crucial to get on board with this, because the whole world is getting on board where they've got a digital strategy going forward. And just like we've spoken about, features and hardware that improves that, or the way you conduct yourself, all makes you different. It makes you different. I mean, I thought Arthur had a virtual background with the books at the back, but now I find out they are actually really books. It's one of those video ones. It's not really. But anyway, so again, I think like Malcolm said, I'm just echoing this. And again, there's some very nice ways and creative ways where you get payment portals to allow people. You can do this session. We did a manual approval process, but you can have an automatic approval, but you can have a manual approval, get your payment, then it pushes the people through to it. And again, you can get really, really creative. If you just Google some of what some people are doing out there, it's really, really interesting from a digital perspective as well.
We have a question. Do you need a camera attached to the laptop for a better view? And I know that's a common question. Is our camera on our laptop sufficient, or would it be better to have an external one? And the other question is it better to have a number of screens in front of you instead of everything on one screen?
So I'll answer that for you. It's an old saying, is that you get what you pay for. So when you look at your laptop and that camera that came with your laptop, it's not a sales pitch for that laptop. It came free with your laptop. So if you add a camera to the outside of that, and you can buy something that has 4K, that's got a very wide viewing angle or a very focused viewing angle, you're going to see a clearer image, not you as the user, but the people that you're addressing. And it's very important. It also has features that may be able to zoom optically, zoom digitally, block out background lights, etc., etc. So yes, they're worthwhile. Very often used in what you're framing. So two people on a panelist like you are seeing us on the screen now. If two of us are sitting next to each other in a studio, the camera would break us up into two slides, and you would see us as two frames. And that's done by the camera. And also you could get up and move around, it'll track you. It's not just the camera that tracks you, it's the microphone attached to that camera that will track you as well. So yes, they're worthwhile purchases. And I'm going to pull in Eric now. What was the second question?
It was cameras and
the double screen. I'll take that one. Can
screens,
I take that?
Yes, multiple screens.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So I think it's got to do with your application and what you're comfortable with. I mean, there's no reason why you cannot conduct yourself on one single screen. You can do everything that's needed, but it's what works for you. Some people prefer to have two separate screens. It does allow you some freedom where you've got your content on the one, camera on the other. My preference is a single screen because then everything is front of me. The problem with a second screen is that, I kind of tend to focus on that. You catching the side of me. I don't like that. Having everything front of house, I do enjoy that a bit more. But again, it's a lot of people from a support perspective like two screens because, and again, that's because the application is a little bit different. But again, it's what your poison is and what you prefer as well.
Eric's being polite. It's age appropriate. His age group likes one screen. Arthur and myself would really like two. It's easier to see the content on one with not having a big picture in the middle of it. So,
Us youngsters like to multitask, Malcolm.
Exactly. And we can.
Right, I see we're just past the hour. I know that Eric is going to be dashing off to go and present another session shortly. How much more time do you have, Eric? Do you have another 5 minutes?
Yes, I do have another 5 minutes.
You do? And Malcolm, are you good for another 5 minutes?
I'm good for another 5, sure.
Okay.
Eric's always late, by the way, because he's busy.
A lot of people are asking business type questions about how it works, how to sign up. I think the best bet, especially with the time constraint, is for you to contact Eric and Malcolm directly. I see Malcolm's address has been posted a few times in the chat window. And if you could just put Eric's address in there as well. But one question I would like to take, because of who it's from, is the question from Hashma Gajjar about whether there are local, with the local purchase options, what are the options, monthly, subscription, annual, or both? And also, what is the cost premium? The reason I raise Hashmak's question is because he was one of the pioneers of productivity software in South Africa. He brought WordPerfect to South Africa when that was still the dominant word processing tool before Word became big. So Hashmak was one of the first people that I actually interviewed in the IT industry when I became a tech journalist about 100 years ago.
Eric?
You take this one.
Arthur, do me a favor and give me a shortened version that everyone's going to follow on.
Let me catch someone. Sorry, Malcolm, I pushed you in front of the bus there. Then I do apologize. But yes, there is obviously monthly and annual options. Going the annual option, you do get 2 months for free. So I always encourage people to go the annual option. I mean, think about it. Having to process one single invoice every single month is a bit of a schlep in itself as well. Having an annual agreement gives you the 2 months for free. And then you can have an annual base plan and then have add-on features on a monthly basis as well. So for instance, you know, if your base plan is a single meeting license, you can then have the webinar license as an add-on service, and that you can then pay on a monthly structure as well. Again, with webinars, I do kind of tend to encourage that because you get the different tiers. And with that, you kind of want to grow your audience. You know, we've got 76 people here. If we're going to have a follow-up session on this, we should hold ourselves accountable to have 150 people in there, which means we need to bounce up to the next tier itself. It's kind of, and again, it's not, you know, not trying to do an extra sale or to upsell you. It is really, it is so valuable just upping that amount of people that you're getting into that session and holding them as well there. And again, stuff like good content that is relevant to the session and holding that audience as well is all very important features as well to do and to practice and to get it down. Yeah.
Look, every single license. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Every single license that's available online from the US is available locally, supported locally, the same price converted from dollar to rand. So whether you're swiping your credit card on a US subscription or you paying locally, it's the same. The only difference in South Africa is there's value added tax, which is claimable. It's worth every cent in the support. Please believe me, if this is not what you do every day, you need the support.
Absolutely. I cannot actually, it is priceless. Having that facility of popping into a live Zoom meeting, which is going from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon at any time with, I think, up to about 7 support staff there who literally you land in the room and you say, hi guys, I need some help. And somebody says, hi Nikki, I'm so-and-so. What can I help you with? And you know that you won't leave that call without a solution is incredible. I just want to read something from Steph Duplessis, who introduced us to Malcolm and to Eric. And he says, he put it in the chat, but he actually addressed it to the panelists instead of to the whole group. He says, hi everyone, Malcolm switched me in an hour and Eric got me going in a day. Their support is solid. I vouch for both 100%. Malcolm's company also built my current studio just before lockdown, and they are building my new studio as we speak. They have a license to operate. I've referred numerous speakers to them, including Nikki and Paul and many others, and I've not had anyone say anything but good stuff about them. And no, I have no commercial interest in either of their businesses. Thanks, Steph. And we really are absolutely grateful to have this amazing duo behind us. I mean, I know that I move forward into this space with confidence. There is one last question that I have before I think we need to wrap up. And I think, Eric, this is for you. Cross-platform situations like MS Teams says that you can pull Zoom into a meeting, but I've yet to make it work. Is it doable? Is it possible?
Is this being recorded? Yes, it is.
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Speak into the microphone.
Were you going to use some swear words?
No.
This is the closeout curtain caller, sure.
No. It's a wrap-up session. No, I think just to again, Zoom does want to coexist with Teams. Let's start with that, because let's think about it. Teams is part of Microsoft. Microsoft is a whole stack of offerings. A lot of organizations use 90% of that stack, where Teams is filling 10%, and Zoom is obviously a specialist in that segment. So you have to have a strategy where it coexists. It does take a little bit of a setup. Prior to Teams, they had Skype for Business. There was a pure federated situation, and that worked pretty seamless. But with the Teams, you now get the bot, and they again, they're working on getting it the same way that Skype for Business used to work, with having a purely federated as well. But there is a bot that does trigger it, but you do require both for that to work as well, where you need a Zoom subscription and a Teams subscription. And then again, you can then assign it to, let's say, to your key individuals, your exco levels as well, and then give it like that. But this is a space where, again, like I said, we have to coexist with them, and we want to coexist with them. And to those who struggle with that, we'll assist you with that.
Right. Before I ask Arthur to thank our speakers and close off, I just want to say that there are a lot of questions in the Q&A, and we will try and get some answers for those questions for you. And I will be putting together an email on behalf of the Speakers Association to send to everybody who was registered for this event, and we can also share a recording. So to our speakers, thank you so much. And
Nikki?
if anybody... Yeah.
Sorry, a lot of you have some ideas about how to move forward in your own field, and by all means you can approach us for that. As an example, Paul's running a session next week on how we increase the following of you online, increase your digital footprint, as Eric referred to it earlier. It'll be a good idea to join that and see how that happens. But if you've got fields that you want us to assist you in, it'll be the greatest pleasure from either of us. I can tell you that. I'll speak for myself. I'm sure Eric will from his side, but we want you guys to succeed, and we're behind you.
Fantastic. And Eric, would you like to say any last words?
Update your software.
Update your software. Right. And
until next time.
If we have anybody on this webinar who is not a member of the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, I have actually put the email address, the website address in the chat, but it's psasouthernafrica.coza, and we would love to have you come and attend one of our meetings. We'd love to get to know you and see if we can help you with your speaking career. Arthur, over to you to wrap up the meeting.
Thank you, Nikki. Eric and Malcolm, thanks so much. We obviously learned a tremendous amount from you, not just in how to set up our speaking environment, but also what resources are available and what the challenges are, along with the various business models for embracing Zoom. I think it's probably made a lot of the speakers far more confident about using Zoom as a tool in the future and dispelling some of the myths and fears around Zoom as well. So we really appreciate that. But most important, I think coming out of this event has been that you've opened a channel of communication with the speakers. Every one of the people attending this event, whether they're speakers or not, whether they're aspirant speakers, professionals, or simply use these tools in their business, they now have an open channel of communication to two of the leading providers of services related to Zoom in South Africa. And for that, we truly thank you. And we thank you for your generosity in terms of your time, your advice, and your services. May it be a Zooming year for all of us. Thank you very much.
Yes, stay safe, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you very